Feel the heart. Experience the soul. Community Pulse.
A very warm welcome to those who have just joined us. It is Radio 786 and 100.4 FM, also 1584 medium wave in Pretoria. A bit of late start for Community Pulse. Nonetheless, we have a very interesting lineup for you this morning. And of course, we know that the water crisis is quite an important one. So the conversation needed to happen earlier with Tashik and, of course, the gentleman that we had in studio. We, of course, looking this morning at the Bootless brain and the best brain. Very interesting title to the topic, Dr. Faiez. Dr. Faiez joins me on a Thursday morning between 9 and 10, and he is once again in studio for that. And remember, you can be part of our conversation if you give us a call 0216991786 or WhatsApp your comments to 0786 10 11 12. Mishka then takes over just after 10 with some of your latest community notices. Also brings you the latest job offers. In between, beautiful music, and also she allows for you to send those special messages to the people in your life. But also you can catch the weekly update with the South African National Zakah Fund. All that and more, you're on Radio 786 and 100.4 FM. Of course, I'll tell you a bit later what's happening after 11 o'clock. That's the final hour. But for now, stay tuned as we start with the first hour with Dr. Faiez looking at the bootless brain versus the best brain. Let's find out what that is about. Assalamu alaikum and shukran for being here.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Zainab, how are you today?
I'm well, alhamdulillah. No complaints besides water.
Yes. Well, that's becoming a real problem, eh? I'm sure there's a lot of water available. We just need to use it properly. But
just on the water issue, I think it's quite interesting how it's becoming a political party issue now more than what it is actually the real crisis that we are in, which is for me very interesting.
Well, I don't know what was said. So someone said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So I'm sure the political parties are taking good advantage of this crisis.
Well, the topic this morning, the bootless brain versus the best brain.
Yeah, I use the word bootless because it really means dysfunctional, not productive, of no benefit to you, something that's broken. Okay, so that's what the word bootless means. And versus the best brain is something that's optimal, that's ultimate. And so I thought perhaps we'll look at how can we develop an ultimate mind or an optimal mind, basically. Now, we can't separate the brain from the body and from the mind because they're all the same thing. We tend to look at it like we talk about the brain and we talk about the body. But you can't actually do that because they're one and the same thing. What happens in the body will affect the brain, and what happens in the brain will affect the body. And the body is actually the mind. So when we talk about a bootless brain, we talk about a bootless mind, we talk about a bootless body. Now, if you look at the global health crisis, it found that 96% of people across the world actually have one or more medical conditions. So everybody's body and mind is not optimal today, virtually everybody. So we can all basically, make an effort to try and optimize, our brain function and the way our minds work. So to try and develop an optimal mind. And so I thought perhaps we can talk about what actually is a bootless brain in terms of the medical conditions, the cognitive, impairments and so forth, the emotional, social problems that people experience. And then how do we repair that? How do we rectify that? How do we reverse that in order to develop an optimal mind? Because really, in order to survive in this world, today, you really need an optimal mind.
Well, so let's go right into it. Seeing that our time is a bit shorter this morning.
Yes.
So a bootless brain, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's dysfunctional. How many of us do you see, in your opinion, have bootless brains?
Well, as I said, 96%, the study showed 96% of humanity has at least one medical condition, but at least a third of them have 5 or more medical conditions. So their bodies are not in optimal function. And so their brains are not in optimal function. And so their minds are not functioning optimally. So we'd say 96% of humanity has a bootless brain or bootless mind. And so, there's much we can do to basically try and reverse that.
So bootless brain is, tell us a bit more.
Well, you look at the mind, we talk about the intellectual mind or the cognitive mind. So you have certain cognitive abilities in terms of the way you think, how you think, your critical thinking skills, your processing speed, your ability to remember, to focus, to concentrate, your flexibility, adaptability. All of these things are cognitive abilities. And then you have social emotional skills, like your confidence levels, your level of integrity, your honesty, your conscientiousness, many of those things, empathy, influence, those kinds of things are social emotional skills. And then you have your body itself, and the body is obviously prone to many illnesses, like we know, and what we think of as brain disorders primarily oftentimes comes from the body. So we often think about psychosomatic disorders, how the mind affects the body. We all know that. But very few people know about somatopsychic disorders, how the body affects the mind.
Yeah.
Okay? So you can't separate the body from the mind, and especially the gut from the brain, because they're basically one and the same thing. They work together. So you can break it down. You can look at it rather from a cognitive perspective, a social emotional perspective. That's a cognitive brain, the social emotional part of the brain, and then the body itself. Okay, so there's many conditions affecting the body. There's so many. There's a whole list, the medicines about all these different diseases. But there's a list of diseases, that perhaps one can talk about that's common. Like anxiety, depression. Alzheimer's disease, ADHD, autism, bipolar, all these things. They're not primarily brain disorders. They actually, a lot of them arise from the body itself and then affect the brain. And underlying all of these things are basically inflammation. And you'll find people with bootless brains, their brains are basically inflamed. There's inflammation in the brain. The immune system has been activated. There's actually more immune cells in the brain than actual neurons.
Sure.
And there's 100 billion neurons, so imagine how many immune cells or glial cells there are. And if you look at problems in society, gangsterism, violence, all of these things are related. Or actually, underlying cause there is basically people's brains are not functioning well, dysfunctional. Even sociopathic behavior can come from inflammation in the brain. And now, so what is actually then now, how do you reverse this? We've talked about the causes, gut problems. If your gut is leaky, your brain was also leaky. So you can't have a leaky brain without a leaky gut. And you have a leaky brain and stuff is getting into your brain that shouldn't be in your brain, like toxins and antibodies that shouldn't be there and so forth. And that's causing problems. So all these behavioral issues you're seeing out there in society, all these crises and so forth, it all comes back to the mind, So basically bootless minds, bootless brains. And we need to sort of reverse this in order to try and reverse the problems that society is experiencing. Yeah. So there's many steps that you can follow then to basically get your mind from a bootless mind to an optimal mind, to an ultimate mind. From a broken brain to an optimal brain. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about how we can move in that direction, and I think that Dr. Faiez seems to have all the answers. So Dr. Faiez, if first tell us your opinion of the best brain, or what it should be, what a brain should be.
First of all, I don't have all the answers.
Most of them.
Maybe some of them. There's so much to know. But the question was, what in your opinion is the best brain? How should our brains be? When is your brain really optimal? When you're basically thinking clearly, you're functioning well, you have the sense of wellness, you have a sense of vitality, a sense of optimism, you have clear thinking, clear cognition, clear concentration, and you're feeling well. You don't have symptoms bothering you all day long, which most people have. Something is bothering them. They have a bit of pain here, their mood is they feel depressed, they can't function, or drinking coffee first. And if that's not part of your life, if you have a sense of vitality and well-being, optimism, you think clearly, you're motivated, then your brain is functioning well, But if you don't feel like that, you're feeling suboptimal, let me put it that way. You have these symptoms every day. You can't get up, get up in the morning, you feel like you just want to go back to bed immediately. A lot of people feel like that. You can't get yourself through the day, you have brain fog. Your brain is not functioning optimally. And there's much you can do to reverse that, basically. Yeah.
But now, what are the causes that your brain becomes fogged and inflamed and all of those things?
Well, there's quite a few underlying root causes. But again, if you look at it from the three stresses perspective, chronic psychological stress, that's a very common one. Okay, people are stressed out of their minds. Then you have your physical stresses. People are not sleeping well. You can classify electromagnetic fields as physical stresses. And you have chemical stresses, very common one, environmental toxins, heavy metals and toxins, very, very, very important cause of inflammation in the brain and body. In fact, environmental toxins has become even more common than lifestyle and dietary issues, apparently, in the causation of disease. So these causes are crucial to understand and to know how to, avoid them or to get rid of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have a caller holding. Let's first go to the lines. This is Radio 786 and 100.4 FM. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Zainabin. As always, we're grateful to Arab for this time and space. How are you, doctor?
Alhamdulillah, brother. You, yourself, are you well?
Alhamdulillah. I won't ask Zainabin because it sounds good already. Alhamdulillah. I just want to add to this discussion. It's such a pertinent sound. Dr. Fazl Rahman Ansari said once when he came to South Africa many, many years ago, a sound mind in a healthy body. Sound mind in a healthy body. There's so much meanings to it, and it's all in the Quran. It's what you eat and how you govern your body, what you do to your body. That actually, But what's the worst thing that happened to people is how they have been dogmatized and how they've been indoctrinated via what they are reading and what they are being told how life is, is all about. For example, this news media that we are so attached to, like CNN, all these people. These are all part of the indoctrination. These are all part of how they control our minds. You always mention this, how we are being controlled, how our minds are being controlled. Now, I discovered, Doctor, I wish people can go into this. It's a very important site. It's somebody from Europe that I met that introduced me to the site. And it's called HARP, HAARP. HARP is the name. It is technology that is being controlled now by scientists that is under this so-called people that wants this global agenda, that wants to promote the global agenda. These scientists are all under these people's auspices. And they are the ones that's controlling our weather. They're the ones that's controlling our news, our economy, everything. They are controlling. And they speak about the end times. There's no such a thing as the end times. The end times, what is meant, I think, is that these people are being discovered, you see. They are being realized because of the Internet. The Internet is exposing them in such a way that they do not know where and what to do. In fact, they want to get rid of Donald Trump because they don't know which way he is going to go. But that is the problem. If we can just revisit in what we are being taught, how we are being taught, what news. I mean, even the water crisis, Allah Ta'ala is the one that provides the water. And I mean, there's no such a thing as that they can predict the closing of the taps. I mean, there's no way that they can say that. Nobody can foresee the future. And this is how we have been indoctrinated. And when we speak about, Zainabin asked you a question about, how can you get to that sound mind? How we can get to that sound mind is we go back to the Quran and we study it and we follow it, and then these people, they will never be able to control us. Because we won't dance to their tune. We won't do what they tell us via their media, and this is how we can get our minds back. Shukran, Doctor, for listening.
Afwan.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Dr. Faiez.
Yeah, shukran, brother, for those beautiful points that you brought up there. Certainly, weather control is a reality. It's not something that, a conspiracy theory. There's absolute proof that weather patterns are actually being controlled in various parts of the world. Whether it's being controlled in this part of the world, I don't know. I have no proof of that. But I know for a fact, and the evidence is irrefutable, that weather is being controlled in certain parts of the world. This high altitude advanced or research project or HARP, really, it's a military program of the American military. All the answers are in the Quran, no doubt about that, and we'll talk about what are the steps you can follow to basically try and reach an optimal mind, acquire an optimal mind. But there's one thing that the Prophet ﷺ said about the mind, especially the intellectual mind. He actually said there's no beauty better than intellect. And he said, be kind, for whenever kindness becomes a part of something, it benefits it. And he was talking about the emotional mind there, okay? And he said many, many things, relating to the body and the mind, basically. So the brother has brought up some very, very important points, and we have to really think about these things. These people are controlling everything. I mean, if you look at the pyramid of control, where we stand as people, as right at the bottom, obviously wanting to make slaves of us, and they have done that to a large degree because they control the money supply specifically, but they control everything else also. And they are being exposed, but they obviously not going to take it lying down. They've got military resources and everything else. But as you say, we have the Quran, so what else do you need? Yeah.
A Bootless brain versus the best brain with Dr. Faiez. Kirsten in studio with me this morning. Our lines open 021 699 1786. You are live. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Salam, doctor.
Alaikum salam.
A friend once told me when I turned 50 that when you turn 50 and you wake up and you don't have an ache, you're probably dead. And unfortunately, it has been proven true for me because I've been a very active person all my life. And just suddenly when I turned 50, to create all the qualities. But what you were talking about earlier, about that inability to get out of bed and getting on with your life and your day, it is so true. I find myself in a space where I wonder where the day's gone. I've been off work since November for various reasons. One of them being depression and anxiety, and then there's the fibromyalgia, all those kind of inflammations. And I am usually someone who eats as healthy as I can afford. I go to gym. And I just travel if I can to keep myself and my brain healthy. But I seem to have been slayed by this onslaught of tiredness. And I just seem, I can't seem to get around it. I can't seem to work it out. I had too many pharmaceuticals that I'm taking, and I'm really looking for a more natural way of dealing with all these things. I will listen while you comment. And thank you. It's a very, very interesting topic.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. 02169911786. Also make use of the WhatsApp line on 0786 10 11 12. Dr. Faiez.
Yes, well, shukran for that input there, sister. Yeah, this is very common. I mean, as we were just speaking about earlier on, virtually everybody has one or two or many symptoms, commonly more than one symptom that they're experiencing every day. And this brain fog, this inability to even get out of bed, it's very, very common, chronic fatigue. And it's all underlying inflammation, and there's underlying causes that's causing inflammation and all this dysfunction. And so you got to get to the root. Like the sister says, she basically has taken many pharmaceutical drugs, probably over many years, I would imagine. And she still feels like that, which just proves that pharmaceutical drugs don't cure anything, In fact, they oftentimes make the problem worse. So what do we do? Brother Ismail mentioned, what the Quran says, eat properly, optimize your nutrition. That's the first key, to basically developing an optimal mind, is to eat the right foods. Because if you're eating the wrong foods, your brain's going to become inflamed, okay? And you'll find in poor communities, they just eat the wrong stuff every day. And you'll find there's a lot of dysfunction in those communities. But also not only in poor communities, in middle class and even upper, the upper echelons of society. They're all eating the wrong foods. You can't call it food anymore. It's not food, really. If you think about what food is and what people are eating, then it's not really food. If you know what the definition of food is, so you got to eat the proper proteins, carbohydrates, fats, minerals. You got to take in vitamins, phytonutrients. There's phytochemicals in plants. The deep colors you see in plants, red, blues, greens. Those are phytochemicals that give the plant those colors, and they're very, very important for cellular function and for health overall. So you must take supplements also, and we can talk about that perhaps. You must balance your hormones. So the second step is you must balance your hormones. If your insulin is out of balance, you're going to have major problems. If your thyroid hormone is out of balance, your thyroid gland is not functioning properly, Hashimoto is a very common problem. If your cortisol and adrenaline is out of whack, which goes up when you're stressed, you've got too much cortisol floating around, too much adrenaline, you're going to feel anxious, your brain is going to actually degenerate because you lose neurons, brain cells, if your cortisol level is high. What else? You have your sex hormones, your estrogen and testosterone, if those levels are out of whack, progesterone is low, you're going to have brain dysfunction. If your testosterone levels are low, you're going to have brain dysfunction.
Okay.
So that's the second step. You've got to balance your hormones. Yeah.
We have a caller, Dr. Faiez. Let's go there. You live. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and the honorable doctor and all your listeners.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I would like to add what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beautifully says. The most rejected or the low creature in the sight of Allah is the one that cannot use his faculties of reason. Meaning, he cannot, he doesn't understand properly, he doesn't observe properly, he doesn't hear the truth. Now, if we talk about drugs, the doctor spoke earlier about drugs, gossip, lies, innovation to create animosity around people, that also becomes a drug. If your brain is not function and you're not mixed with the proper people to understand the wisdom and the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says clearly in the Quran, those who cannot reflect, those who cannot think, those who don't understand, they are all people of hell. Now, that's why we must always pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the faculties of wisdom, the faculties of reason, the faculties to be able to understand and work out things for ourselves. That's why the world is in turmoil, because people are just there for selfish purposes, for selfish gain, and for prestige. They're not there for truth and to enhance and uplift humanity. That's why Nabi Muhammad prophesied, like the earlier caller has mentioned, that they will control the rain. Nabi Muhammad did say they will even control the plants, when to grow. They will even control the weather. They will control everything. These are the signs of Qiyamah, and we are living at that time. But Qiyamah here doesn't mean the end of the world. It only means the end of an age, the end of a period. When man destroys himself, then Allah will create a new generation or a new people will emerge.
Shukran, brother. Shukran wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Not exactly related to the topic, however, a few of the points were, but I do have, Dr. Faiez, a few WhatsApp messages that came via 0786 10 11 12. Assalamu alaikum, doctor. Shukran for the topic. I felt so hurt last night when my son messaged me to say, Mom, didn't wish me for my birthday. I was crying and said to him, he must give me mouth that I forgot this birthday and I will make it up with him. I'm 56 years old and very forgetful.
Afwan for that, sister. Yes, I know. Forgetfulness, memory problems are very, very common. And
56 is a bit young, isn't it?
Yes, it could be a sign of various different brain dysfunctions. It could be even Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's, So certainly a patient or the person that needs to be investigated as to what's causing this memory problems. It's a very common problem, though, forgetfulness. Yeah.
But how does it relate to perhaps a fogged brain or?
Well, it's all underlying inflammation in the brain. That's commonly what you'll find if you sort of do a autopsy on people who died of Alzheimer's or diseases related to brain fog. You'll find there's inflammation in the brain. It's very common because we're exposed to all these inflammatory things that are causing inflammation. The food we eat, the toxins and so forth. And the chronic stress, the subconscious stress, the psychological stress, the negative thoughts we think every single day, that's damaging us. And people don't understand the relationship between their thinking and their state of health. That is proven. I mean, there's not even an argument anymore. So thinking, you have to change your thinking. If it's all negative, destructive thinking every day, you're actually hurting yourself in a big way.
The time now is 9:43 and we are due for a break. The topic this morning is a bootless brain versus the best brain. Dr. Faiez Kirsten joins me live in studio. Our lines open 021 699 1786. WhatsApp us on 0786 10 11 12. Stay with us. You're tuned to Radio 786 on 100.4 FM. It is 9:45 and we are in conversation with Dr. Faiez Kirsten joining me live in studio. We're talking about the best brain or a bootless brain versus the best brain. Our lines open 021 699 1786. WhatsApp us on 0786 10, 11, 12. And I must admit, there's quite a few WhatsApp messages that I'm just busy accessing with regards to the topic. Nonetheless, still continue WhatsApping your comments or questions. Also, you can give us a call on 021 699 1786. Now, Dr. Faiez, we've been talking about really what is when is your brain at its optimal, right? But now you mentioned that food, what we eat, has as a contribution. It's a contributing factor of why we find that we have fogged brain, etc. Now, what are brain food? What are the brain foods that we can basically try and include in our diets?
Oh, the best. Well, in terms of the fats, first of all, the brain is made up mainly of fat. Okay, so people are all fat heads. All of us are fat heads. Okay, because our brain is made up mainly of fat. So you got to eat good fats. You get good fats and you get bad fats. Okay, now the bad fats are not bad; they're evil. Okay, these are things like hydrogenated oils, trans fats, which you find in processed foods, and they got lots of omega-6 in there. And they just cause destruction, wreak havoc throughout your body. So eat good fats and avoid the bad fats. And perhaps one day we can talk about those specifically. You know, what are good fats and good oils? The good fats you'll find in things like avocados, coconut oil, coconuts in the raw form. There's many. Olive oil, very, very good. You know, nuts and seeds. Those contain all of them contain good fats. Grass-fed butter and so forth. And then you must eat carbohydrates, you know, but the proper carbs, not the high GI carbs that's going to make you a food addict. I mean, that's what these food companies do. They create foods that make us addicted to these foods. And we put on weight and we can't stop eating these foods. And they've actually confused in our minds the difference between pleasure and happiness. So there's a big difference. There's a different part of the brain that's involved, different neurotransmitters involved. When it comes to pleasure, it's actually dopamine. And these foods that they make, so-called foods, actually make people addicted to them because they stimulate dopamine production. And after a while, you basically get down-regulation of these dopamine receptors. So you have less and less dopamine receptors, and you need to eat more and more of these foods in order to get the hit, that pleasure that you get from these so-called foods. And eventually, you just have to eat in order just to feel normal. And then your neurons start dying, your brain cells start dying because there's no more brain receptors for dopamine. And then you basically become a food addict. And when you're a food addict, you're like any drug addict. So sugar you find in processed foods, these flours and so forth, these are highly addictive foods designed specifically to make you an addict so that you can buy more of their product so that and in the process you end up dying while making them rich. So it's all designed that way. And then they confuse that pleasure with happiness. They make you believe that you're going to be happy if you eat these foods or if you buy these products. Meanwhile, it's a whole deliberate orchestrated thing basically. How did I go off on a tangent there? What was your question again?
Okay, I have a few WhatsApp messages that I think is necessary to just go through. Does simvastatin affect your memory?
It would, yeah. Simvastatin would. Simvastatin would definitely do that. Simvastatin has multiple negative effects in your body. It'll destroy your heart, give you diabetes, and destroy your brain. Yeah. And
then there's a comment or suggestion that if to improve poor memory, you should recite Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Allah is compassionate, Allah is entirely merciful, especially merciful 100 times after every Farul Salah. It helps, alhamdulillah. And then a message, Assalamu alaikum. Let's go to Al-Quran chapter 2 verse 107 when are we going to wake up? Okay. Also a message that says, Assalamu alaikum, how can we remove heavy metals from the brain, and is it true that metals in the brain makes it hard for you to remember things and also names?
Good question, very good question. One of the steps which I was going to come to is to enhance detoxification, because heavy metals is a huge problem. Lead, mercury, aluminium, arsenic, these things are massive problems today. We're exposed to them all the time. And we need to detox ourselves on an ongoing basis. That's really one of the key issues today, is to actually to try and be healthy and have an optimal mind, is to detox. What was the question?
The question was heavy metals. How does heavy metals?
Yeah, there's protocols that you can use. You have binders, but there's certain protocols that you can use, detox protocols to remove mercury, lead, whatever it is. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Shukran for the lovely program. Can you please go a bit more into detail how to get rid of the inflammation in the body? I know for sure that sugar is a big contributor to inflammation.
Yeah. Well, as I said, you got to optimize your nutrition. You got to balance your hormones. All of these things, like you mentioned, detox. And fix your gut. Very, very important. Okay, very important to fix your gut with good nutrition, prebiotics, probiotics, and so forth. And you got to cool off inflammation itself specifically. And there's things that you can do to cool off inflammation, but this to actually go through all of them would be a whole story. But we can maybe cover a few of them. We've already mentioned a few things, which is eat proper foods, environmental toxins, get rid of those. Hidden infections is a very common one. Hidden infections, Lyme disease, and so forth. Allergens is a very, very important one that can cause inflammation throughout the body and the brain. So foods are very commonly allergenic today. People are allergic to it. Everybody should stop eating dairy, I think, and gluten and soy, because these things are really problematic, problematic. And then obviously manage your stress. So it's basically certain principles you must follow in order to get rid of this inflammation. Yeah.
And then we have a question that came via 0786 10 11 12, our WhatsApp line, that reads, what exactly is cellulitis? Because my sister apparently had it, and it caused severe headaches and extreme blurred vision. On one of her eyes. She had it drained and it's better now, alhamdulillah. What foods are recommended to eat to prevent it from reoccurring?
Cellulitis. It's an infection in the skin, a spreading infection in the skin. And it can be very painful, gives you a fever. It's a bacterial infection of the skin, below the skin, spreading below the skin. And that should be treated, yeah. And
then we have reciting regularly. Reciting the Quran regularly can prevent Alzheimer's. I think that is correct. I also read that somewhere that people who read from the right to the left, which means you use a different part of the brain that you don't normally use, it does prevent Alzheimer's.
Yes.
Also, one more. I agree with you about eating unnecessary. I found that if I eat certain breads, you tend to eat more and you keep on craving to eat, although you're not hungry. And what what causes heat in the body?
Causes heat. Bread.
Yeah.
Causes heat in the body.
Yes.
Turns to toast. I don't know, but bread is definitely a no-no. I don't eat bread. What I would do is eat sweet potato bread from time to time, but that even that is not a good idea because it's made with some other kind of flour also.
Okay.
So flours and breads are not a good idea, I don't think. Yeah.
And then I take omega-3 for osteoporosis in my shoulders. Is this fine?
Omega-3 for osteoporosis. Omega-3 generally we should be taking anyway, but osteoporosis, bone density is decreased, so that you need to do more than that basically. Yeah, and they're just taking omega-3.
Okay. Okay, then I have the Memorex that the shop sells. Does this really help, or is it just another money making?
Memorex, I've seen Memorex on the shelves. I don't know if it works. I suppose it does. That's why it's on the shelf, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Also, the earlier question I had was, does simvastatin affect the memory? That same person also WhatsApped a question about metformin. She says she messaged the wrong number last week when we spoke about diabetes. It says, which doctors can treat me effectively for my diabetes too, as I wish to stop using metformin. I am just over 50 years old.
Well, you shouldn't be on medication if you have diabetes, especially type 2, because it's not necessary. You should actually be working on reversing your diabetes. A lot of people are pre-diabetic. That's becoming more and more common. And then obviously they move on to diabetes. So if you're not diabetic, then we should be taking steps to prevent diabetes. If you're pre-diabetes, you must reverse that. And if you're diabetic, you must also reverse that. Because those medications are not there to help you and cure your diabetes. They're just to maintain your diabetes. That's really what the medication is doing. It's not curing anything. It's just maintaining your diabetes and giving you the impression, the belief that your diabetes has been taken care of. Whereas the chances of you developing a complication are very high, even though you're on medication.
On a final note, with about, say, less than 2 minutes left, Dr. Faiez, it seems like time really flew this morning. Nonetheless, let's wrap up and look at the actual topic being the a bootless brain versus the best brain. What do we conclude with, Dr. Faiez?
Well, there were a few other steps that we can perhaps cover at another time. How to increase your cognitive ability and so forth, how to calm the mind and so forth, how to boost your mitochondria, because mitochondria is really at the root. These little organelles in the cells that are the powerhouses that produce energy for us. If they are under attack, then, they don't work properly. We feel tired, our cells die, and eventually we die. So we got to boost our mitochondrial function and so forth. What else? There's so much to talk about when it comes to a bootless brain versus the best brain. But maybe just end off with a quote from the Prophet ﷺ again, just talking in general. And he says, the best richness is the richness of the soul. So if you want to be wealthy, enrich your soul.
Inshallah. Dr. Faiez, to you, shukran for your time.
Afwan.
Always a pleasure speaking to you.
Shukran to you.
I do hope that we can always take heed from the messages that you leave us with, inshallah, and try and implement it. Because what is knowledge without implementation?
Absolutely.